Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Exodus chapter 10 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We are continuing our steady journey through the text right now, and honestly, we're covering one of the most dramatic and intense sequences in the entire narrative. We are about to witness the absolute breaking point of an empire, the terrifying descent of the 8th and ninth plagues, and ultimately a chilling final standoff. It is an incredible chapter, so let's get right into it. Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the introduction and the locust threat, then we'll move through the frantic negotiations and the resulting devastation. After that, we'll witness the terrifying plague of darkness and face the final confrontation. And finally, we'll wrap up by clarifying some key ideas and drawing out some really practical life lessons. Section 1, Intro, and the locust threat. Let's dive straight into verses 1 and 2 to really understand the divine purpose driving these terrifying events. To really set the stage, let's remember exactly where we are in the story. Egypt has just been absolutely devastated by a catastrophic storm of hail. Much of the land is completely destroyed, yet somehow Pharaoh remains incredibly stubborn. So in verse 1, the Lord tells Moses to go back to Pharaoh, explicitly stating that he has hardened Pharaoh's heart and the hearts of his officials. Now, you might be wondering, why? Well, God tells Moses exactly why in verse 2, so that he may perform these miraculous signs, and crucially, so that Moses can tell his children and his grandchildren how the Lord dealt harshly with the Egyptians. This whole sequence, it's entirely about creating a lasting historical memory that will be passed down for generations. Now notice the piercing directness of the warning here. In verses 3 through 6, Moses and Aaron march right up to Pharaoh and ask a totally confrontational question directly from the God of the Hebrews. How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? They deliver a very clear ultimatum: let the people go, or tomorrow a swarm of locusts is crossing your border. And listen, this won't be just any swarm. Moses warns that they will cover the face of the ground so completely that the earth literally cannot be seen. They're going to devour whatever little vegetation managed to survive the hail, and they will completely fill the houses of all the Egyptians. It's a level of horror that neither their fathers nor their forefathers had ever seen. And you know what Moses does after delivering this incredibly heavy threat? He just turns around and walks right out. Section 2, Negotiations and the Devastation. Moving into verses 7 through 20, we start to see some frantic scrambling from Pharaoh's camp, followed by the ultimate arrival of the swarm. There is a massive, massive shift in the dynamic right here. Just look at verse 7. This isn't Moses speaking. This is Pharaoh's own inner circle of officials, and they are in an absolute panic. They finally break. They literally plead with Pharaoh, asking, how long will this man be a snare to us? They are begging him to just let the men go so they can worship their God. And then they hit him with a rhetorical question that really shows the stark reality of the situation. Do you not yet realize that Egypt is ruined? I mean, the infrastructure is completely gone. The agriculture is shattered. His own advisors know it's already over, and they're desperately trying to make him see it. So, in verses 8 through 11, Pharaoh brings Moses and Aaron back to the palace. Pharaoh says, fine, go worship your God. But just who exactly will be going? Now, Moses is totally uncompromising here. He says they are going with everyone, the young, the old, the sons, the daughters, and all their flocks and herds, because they are celebrating a festival to the Lord. The whole shebang. But Pharaoh? He tries this doomed compromise. With absolute sarcasm dripping from his voice, he refuses to let the families go, telling them they are clearly bent on evil, and insists that only the men can leave. Then he actually has Moses and Aaron violently driven out of his presence. Well, because Pharaoh refused, the threat becomes a terrifying reality in verses 12 to 15. The Lord commands Moses to stretch out his staff, and what follows is a literal step-by-step devastation. The Lord makes an east wind blow across the land all day and all night. When morning finally comes, that wind brings the locusts. The text here is incredibly vivid. They invade all of Egypt in unprecedented numbers. They cover the ground until it is literally black. Imagine that. They devour absolutely everything left by the hail. Every green plant, every piece of fruit on the trees, just consumed. Nothing green remained in all of the land of Egypt. Not a single thing. In verses 16 to 20, we witness the immediate fallout of this. Pharaoh quickly summons Moses and Aaron back. He is utterly terrified at this point. He actually confesses, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. He begs for forgiveness just this once more, practically pleading with Moses to pray to take this deadly plague away. So Moses leaves and prays, and the Lord responds by shifting the very mechanics of nature. He changes the wind to a very strong west wind. This wind catches up all the locusts and blows them completely into the Red Sea. Not a single locust is left behind. But, staying true to the divine plan, the Lord hardens Pharaoh's heart once again, and he firmly refuses to let the Israelites go. Section 3. The Plague of Darkness. Now, in verses 21 through 23, a sudden, terrifying ninth plague descends upon Egypt, and this time, there is zero warning. The physical reality of this darkness is what makes it so uniquely terrifying. As described in verses 21 and 22, the Lord tells Moses to simply stretch his hand toward the sky. Instantly, total darkness covers all of Egypt. The text explicitly calls it a darkness that can be felt. Think about that for a second. This wasn't just a nighttime eclipse or, heavy cloud cover. This was a palpable, absolute blackness that completely enveloped the land for 3 full days. You could literally feel the darkness. Verse 23 details the paralyzing effect of this plague. It states that for 3 whole days, no one could see anyone else, nor could they even leave their place. The entire Egyptian society was completely frozen, just trapped in place by this suffocating physical darkness. But the text draws a stark, miraculous contrast here. All the Israelites had light in the places where they lived. So even in the midst of Egypt's darkest possible hour, a physical separation and a miraculous protection hovered directly over the Israelites. It's an incredible image. Section 4. The Final Confrontation. Verses 24 through 29 bring us to the absolute breaking point. This is the intense, final face-to-face meeting between these two leaders. In verses 24 to 26, the oppressive darkness finally prompts Pharaoh to summon Moses yet again, and Pharaoh makes one last, desperate attempt at a compromise. He says that all the people, including the women and children this time, can go worship, but they must leave their flocks and herds behind. Well, Moses flatly rejects this. He explains that they need the animals to present sacrifices and burnt offerings to the Lord. Moses' steadfast requirement is absolute. He says, "Our livestock too must go with us, not a hoof is to be left behind." Because they don't yet know exactly what the Lord will require for worship, they must take absolutely everything. Verses 27 to 29 bring a completely chilling conclusion to this meeting. Once again, the Lord hardens Pharaoh's heart. He is no longer willing to negotiate at all. Pharaoh just snaps and issues a direct death threat to Moses. "Get out of my sight. Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." And Moses? He is entirely unfazed. He's remarkably calm in the face of this threat, and he uncompromisingly accepts the finality of it. He just replies, "Just as you say, I will never appear before you again." And with that, the negotiations are officially over. Section 5. Key Ideas and Clarifications. Let's take a step back and synthesize what we've just read by looking purely at the plain text, the Peshat, to clarify the core themes of Chapter 10. When we distill this chapter's literal events, 3 major themes clearly stand out. First, the text explicitly states the plagues are happening so the story can be passed down to children and grandchildren. It's really about building a legacy of memory. Second, the absolute ruin of Egypt. We see through Pharaoh's own officials that the infrastructure and agriculture are entirely broken. The nation is essentially destroyed, and everyone knows it but him. Third, we see Moses' unwavering demands. Early on in the story, Moses asked. Now, Moses dictates. He refuses every single compromise Pharaoh offers, demanding complete, 100% compliance with God's word. Now, a major question that naturally arises from verses 1, 20, and 27 is why God repeatedly hardened Pharaoh's heart. Clarifying this straight from the simple English text, God states the reason up front. It allowed the full sequence of miraculous signs to be demonstrated in Egypt. Think about it. If Pharaoh had given in easily, the full power and reality of the Lord would not have been shown to the Egyptians, nor would it have become the foundational epic story for the Israelites to teach their future generations that the Lord is God. Section 6. Life Lessons and Recap. Let's draw out some really practical life lessons from this literal history, followed by a quick recap to solidify everything we've learned today. From the plain events of the text, we can take away several incredibly practical lessons to improve ourselves right now. First, we clearly see the deeply destructive nature of stubborn pride. Pharaoh ignored the literal ruin of his world, which was even pointed out by his closest advisors, just to hold on to his ego. Second, verse 2 highlights the profound duty we have to purposely teach our children and grandchildren our history and where we come from. And finally, there is a powerful lesson in Moses' attitude. When we commit to a righteous path or a divine command, we must commit fully, not leaving so much as a hoof behind. Half measures and compromises on core truths simply do not work. To fully recap the chronological flow of Exodus 10, we started with the threat of locusts, which pushed Pharaoh's officials to their absolute breaking point. When Pharaoh tried to compromise, Moses refused, which led to the worst locust plague in history, wiping out whatever green was left in Egypt. After a false repentance by Pharaoh, a terrifying, palpable darkness paralyzed the Egyptians for 3 full days, while the Israelites, miraculously, had light. Finally, Pharaoh made one last desperate attempt to keep the Israelite flocks, which Moses flatly denied. This resulted in a hardened heart, a death threat, and the absolute final break in communication between Moses and Pharaoh. Moses walked away from that final meeting knowing there was no turning back, setting the perfect stage for the most devastating plague of all. How will Egypt survive what comes next? Well, we'll find out soon. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.